On today's installment of the College Loop, can Auburn football compete for a national championship in 2024? We'll look at their blue chip ratio per On3 Sports. Then we're going to talk men's basketball. JOHNI Broome is back, folks. It's official. The wait is over. We can start looking at what this roster is going to look like with him returning, still a couple other pieces. We'll discuss that when we get to the hardwood. Then on the diamond, Auburn Baseball hosting its second consecutive. That's 2 in a row, folks. Regional on the Plains. They're going to play host to a couple different teams. We will break down their chances, and we're going to talk maybe, is Butch Thompson the best coach on the Plains right now? It's a conversation. All this and more right here on the College Loop.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast, episode 68 of the College Loop Podcast. And guess what? The only podcast covering Auburn sports that has I just messed it all up. The only podcast covering a team that is the only SEC team to have a Buc-ee's in their town. That comes out every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday as well.
That's true. I mean, we are the only podcast that comes out every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, named the College Loop, that covers the only school in America that has a Buc-ee's. That is a statement of fact.
There's so much. That was such a tongue twister. I thought I was going to do it first try, but
Props to Lane Kiffin. Look, you can love the guy, you can hate the guy. I think Auburn dodged a giant Lane Kiffin-sized bullet this offseason. But he's a pretty damn funny Twitter troll. And the whole Chevron gas station that serves chicken on a stick, pretty damn funny. And hats off. I thought that was hilarious. It was cringy. It's not like Penn State, like Super Bowl graphic cringy. But it was cringy and it was funny. Dylan, we got some football right now. I mean, that's just this statement of fact. So you ready to jump into it? I'll let you introduce the floor here, and we'll discuss. Because I've got some questions for you about it.
As this is coming out, I'm trying to pull that up exactly the date because I always forget what exact day we are talking about whenever I'm recording. So we are officially 95 days out from the start of the college football season, and it's worth mentioning that football is a daily thing around here, and we're always either looking towards the next season, and we're also going to be looking towards the next season as well. On3 put below a graphic talking about 2024 net recruiting class and their blue chip ratio, which if you're not sure of what that is, it's basically your 4- and 5-star commitments. Is it like in the state? I always thought blue chip was like within the state, but it's just 4 and 5 stars.
It's just 4 and 5 stars, and there's actually On3 did a great job with their breakdown here. It's very comprehensive list, a very comprehensive list rather, and I think that it presents some interesting data, and we'll break it down from an Auburn standpoint here in a second. But I want to go with the overarching, just kind of break this down 1 through 5 and show how Auburn falls and stacks up here. So the way that On3 broke this down is that they'll mention the team ranking at the beginning and then give the overall score, which is your average of blue chips, which is your combined 4 and 5 stars, right? So if you start at Alabama, their percent of blue chips is 100 right now. and their average score is 94.615. That makes some perfect sense. But in terms of recruiting, not the number 1 team in the country right now. That's interesting to me. And then you go to South Carolina, they're at 92.951, which is a surprise right there for sure. You're also looking at class size on average. Then Florida, which makes perfect sense, 93.763. Ohio State, 94.915. Auburn, 90.312. Now, this is interesting just from a surface level before we keep going deeper. There's a certain school within the SEC that's not on this list, Dylan. Is that fascinating to you?
Yes, it's very fascinating to me because I'm just looking at this, and it's funny to me to imagine a world where South Carolina could win the East in 2024 or further on because their blue chip ratio, if it stays like it is, of course.
Mind you, this is just a ratio. This is just a percentage of your recruiting class, and no one in their right mind thinks Georgia's going anywhere. But still interesting, right?
Yeah, and Georgia falls, I believe, at Auburn's at 5. They fall at 8th. Is where Georgia is at 69%. So it's a pretty nice percentage, but it does leave 11 spots in between Auburn and Georgia in that regard. But it just speaks to what Auburn's recruiting class is looking like for next season. And I got to be honest, Martavis Collins is not going to end his high school career as a 3-star. So
sure. 100% agree. Something else I think is interesting to note that On3 mentioned, and this is so. I think this is fascinating, Dylan, because we're still working on this new landscape of the NIL, and you can put that in one of like the subject lines for the algorithm for YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean I went on the excuse me, not up tempo, yeah, up tempo. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I guess twice there. I went on the up tempo podcast a couple days ago, and we talked about the landscape of the NIL and how finances being divvied out is so important. I want to read out some numbers to you real quick about just dollars spent from NIL collectives on average. Alabama as leading the pack at $218,000. That is no surprise, folks. They are still the biggest brand in college football. Do not be mistaken, and they will continue to be. South Carolina, $90,000. Florida, $166,000. Ohio State, $141,000. Auburn, $90,000. That is fascinating. It is a drastic drop off from 5 to 6, where Clemson pulls in, and Clemson, who's built on God's name, image, and likeness per Dabo Swinney, is spending on average $58,000. And you jump down to Georgia, who we were talking about a minute ago, is somehow not in this same percentile range, who's spending on average $159,000, which that's not necessarily just in a collective. That's all obviously in endorsement deals, things of that nature. Very, very interesting to see how NIL may not be the front-running cause, except for the fact that Alabama is certainly an outlier.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Oh, I was just agreeing with what you were saying, but it is fair to mention that it is pretty early in the recruiting process for these kids. But looking at the blue chip ratio is important, because if you go throughout the past 10, 15, 20 years of looking at the blue chip ratio, there's a stark comparison. Like, what's the phrase, causation without what is it? I'm trying to think. There's like a science term that I am blanking on.
Oh, you're asking the wrong guy if you're looking for science.
Yeah, I definitely am. But it does show in the blue chip ratio that the teams that tend to do the best in recruiting are the ones winning the championships. And Auburn being in the top 5 puts them in a good spot for the future. And especially if this recruiting class can get any better than it already is. And like I already said, Martavis Collins is going to be a 4-star by the time he graduates from high school. And whenever he early enrolls into Auburn, definitely going to happen, I presume.
It's interesting too. I mean, obviously, it's 4 out of 5 guys, which is how Auburn pulls up at 80% of blue chips to this point. You have so many guys that are kind of in that range that are at the 4 stars. Look at Walker White, Jamaria, Fat Burnett, Amon Lane, Jaden Lewis, and like you mentioned, not a lot of us think that Martavis Collins is going to stay parked at that 3-star position, and it graded right now as an 88.3. If you round up, we round up around here.
88.28.
That's right. So it's interesting to take a look at, and also the fact that 3 of these guys are from the state of Alabama. If percentage wise, I know that, like you mentioned, small sample size right now. Auburn's parked at 60% in state. That is actually the highest in, I think, the top 10. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact it's in the top 10 for these blue chip ratios that we're looking at ranking. The next closest being Alabama at 57. Georgia is a staggeringly low 31%, and there's a ton of talent in Georgia, by the way, obviously. Oregon at 14%, which is no surprise. There's really not football talent in the Pacific Northwest. Sorry, I said what I said. Ohio State, 38%. Clemson, 0% in state. It is interesting to see. Dylan, how much does this speak to the let's call it what it is, the impressive recruiting job done to this point by Hugh Freeze?
I think you also mentioned the great recruiting job by Shane Beamer as well, because he shares the state with Dabo Swinney, and he currently has 56%, while Dabo has 0%. But
listen, we're not here to drag Dabo through the mud. That was a tongue twister. But also, like, if there's a stray bullet we could send, I'm not opposed.
Yeah, it tried to fire off. But yeah, looking at it, I mean, Jamarion Burnett, you're going to correct me to say Fat Burnett, coming from Andalusia. Amon Lane coming from Moody. Jaden Lewis from Anniston, all from the state of Alabama. And, of course, you mentioned a lot of other guys coming from Central Phoenix City who Hugh Freeze has been in contact with, trying to get guys from there. Every one in Montgomery, Birmingham, he's been all over the place. He's recruited from Tuscaloosa, trying to get guys to come from and choose the other school from out of state. And I call it the other school because Auburn has been the other school in the state of Alabama for the longest time in recruiting the state. It's like, do you want to come to Alabama or do you want to go somewhere else?
Right.
Because we talked about it every time we talk about recruiting. Florida State, Georgia, and there was another school, I think, all take guys that Auburn should be in the running for, but they just haven't been. And you had the guy who decided to come at Auburn last week from the state of Idaho, who decided he wanted to throw some shots and say that it was it was the fans' fault for everything, but it was maybe kind of just maybe his fault for not doing his job, recruiting especially. Uh, and Gus Malzahn, the last part of his career, his recruiting basically fell off too. But Hugh Freeze has put his foot down and said there is some good talent in the state of Alabama.
Sure.
I think ranking wise, Alabama has now moved up to like top 5 for high school talent out of the states, behind I think it's like Georgia, California,
Texas,
Florida, and I think it's Alabama and then Louisiana. I think are like right there.
I think Alabama and Louisiana are probably interchangeable.
Yeah, and I'm going to put Alabama in the top 5 for purposes of
Sure.
making a conversation better.
Sure. I mean, I don't disagree. There's a ton of talent in your backyard. So
yeah, and a job's not finished yet. It's not finished yet.
Here's a question for you. Auburn's currently per 24/7. Who has Auburn ranked higher actually than On3 right now in their overall grades in the class of 2024? They have them at 32. So which means we've always said that 24/7 was actually better at grading Auburn overall recruiting than On3. We agree with that, right? Best website for grading Auburn's overall performance in the 2024 recruiting cycle on May the 29th of 2023. We've always said that.
Oh, of course.
Always said that. Auburn will finish blank in the 2024 recruiting rankings. In your opinion, Dylan? This is the most important class for Hugh Freeze, by the way. Period.
Oh yeah, and based on the trajectory, what I think it's going to be, I think Auburn's going to finish in the top 10, and I think they're going to finish top 4 in the SEC.
Okay, I am not quite as optimistic yet because I think you need to see a little on-field results to help. That's another recruiting tool, right? Just to see that the teams are heading in the right direction. I think Auburn, a top 10 for sure. I feel very comfortable about that. I think like 8 or 9 feels right, which I don't know that puts you in the top 4 for the SEC. It probably doesn't. Probably put you like 6 or 7 in the SEC.
Well, looking at the top 4 in the SEC right now, they got a long way to go because let's see, Georgia has 4 5-stars as it stands right now. South Carolina got 1. Florida has 4. Bama has 3. Bama's currently at 7th in the SEC. I know it's early.
They'll be fine.
They'll be fine. Yeah,
Bama will be fine.
It's just a little thing to bring up. I will say I don't understand the whole. This is probably a conversation for us to have outside the podcast. The average recruit thing, shouldn't that be what you go by instead of like your points per?
We'll talk about that on another off the air, and then we'll actually circle back to that on another. That's a good conversation for another episode.
Auburn should be like in the top, like 8, if that's the case.
Okay, you got to factor in numbers too. But anyways, I would agree with you. I think top 10 is a lock. For sure. But we will see how that shakes out. And if Hugh Freeze keeps working the transfer portal the way he worked it this year, I mean, which was, let's be honest here, beautifully. I mean, people aren't talking enough about what the job that Auburn has done quietly this offseason, and that's probably the way Auburn fans want it to be. But
yeah, you don't want to have any bad news penetrating the news headlines. So
yeah, that's thank you for that innuendo. Let's talk hoops for a minute. He's back. JOHNI Broome returning to the Plains, returning to Bruce Pearl and Company's program. I almost said organization, same difference. It doesn't matter. NIL makes it an organization. Who cares? Even Bruce Pearl, we got the actual meme, verbal meme right now. Verbal meme. I want you to put the word out there that we back up. And we got that tweet from Bruce Pearl today. JOHNI's already back on the roster website. they definitely just had it saved in the drafts and ready to update the website.
There was an intern that had to wait all day with his finger above the button. Waiting.
For sure. Yeah, no, he wasn't allowed to move either. He or she was not allowed to move. They're like, we will feed you lunch we're gonna feed you like chicken nuggets while you sit here with one hand over this button. That is in my head. That's how that went down. And JOHNI Broome is back, so now we can start really talking. And Auburn fans, you can take your sigh of relief. You can exhale. All right, you've got your big piece that you needed to come back. Who we agree, Dylan, we think going to the G League, these G League camps and tournaments, and entering his name in the draft. Actually, we think that makes him better. I think he got some really, really good work in, and I think that brings a lot to the table coming into the college game this fall or winter rather. What's the face for?
I went to the roster. Jalen Williams is listed on here.
Is he?
Yeah, he is.
Okay. Well, maybe that's not official yet.
They're back.
I still think that's happening. But
well, he's still here, the graduate student too. So
now you can start looking, and going, okay. Auburn now has a clear rotation of guys, and then you're adding Aiden Holloway, Denver Jones into the mix. You're adding Chad Baker Mazzara into this mix, and suddenly things are looking. They were already looking up. Don't get me wrong. You're starting to look around. You're like, wow, like this team could be special, Dylan. Am I wrong?
Oh yeah. You were completely right, and especially if one guy whose name is still in the draft portal name thing
decides to withdraw his name and come to Auburn.
Yeah, if Julian Phillips finally decides if he wants to come play with Auburn Tigers, or if he wants to go, what was it? He was like pick 53 or 58 was what the last mock draft we talked about here was. Yeah, so whenever he decides he wants to transfer to the Auburn Tigers, looking at the roster again, I mean, you have Chad Baker Mazzara, who we've talked about can shoot lights out. It was with 46% from the 3-point line. Basically, if he shoots, it's a 50-50 shot if he's going to make it or not.
Hey, and don't forget about my boy Denver Jones. Shoots the ball well.
Denver Jones, Aiden Holloway, Jay Will, JOHNI Broome,
Trey Donaldson,
Trey Donaldson. If Tyron Lawrence, if his name ever resurrects from wherever he is,
wherever that went to,
I think he's in Cancun. Got to be honest. I think he's chilling. He's been nowhere.
So finals and said, "I'm going to take a vacation."
Yeah, you got Cheney Johnson, Katie Johnson, Leor the Berman, Dylan Cardwell, and Simo all on this roster thus far, and some other guys mixed in.
Tell me if I'm overreacting here, but I think that this is kind of what happened. So you go into this offseason, and Auburn was not, by Auburn standards now, which this is incredible, Auburn fans. You should soak this up and be appreciative. By Auburn standards, Auburn wasn't tremendously great last year. And the fact that not being tremendously great, it means the second round next in the NCAA tournament. Folks, Tony Barbie was not that long ago. definitely, and soak that up and enjoy that. But what Bruce Pearl looked and said, all right, we kind of need to blow some of this up. Some of this needs to change. We need to talk and work through what this looks like. And the Flanagans, maybe it's time to part ways. And it was that we've talked about that. And Wendell, there's just not a spot for you next year. Whether or not Wendell wanted to be there is not part of the conversation. It's quite clear that entering his name in the draft and not returning was really not an option. And that's okay. That's all right. This group, or this coaching staff that Bruce Pearl's kind of reconstructed, reconfigured, recalibrated, if you will, has kind of looked and said, all right, so here's what we didn't do well last year. Let's address the shooting problem. Let's address the fact that we actually can play a little more 3-and-D ball than we've kind of thrown away from. We have to be able to shoot the 3 ball in the college game now. And we've got to play bigger at the guard position. And yeah, I mean, this is something you could have probably figured out a year and a half ago, but adapting and surviving, right? That is the key to the game. The key for a head coach to make a long tenure. No one take that out of context. Bruce Pearl is going to be at Auburn for the rest of his career, forever. He's going to be the guy.
Build the statue.
That's right. Dylan, I've been amazed. How impressed are you with this group? And I'm not just trying to gaslight or try to like sunshine pump. I'm actually very, very impressed by Bruce Pearl Company, their ability to take a step back and say, here's what we need to fix. Damn it, we're going to fix it.
Yeah, and look at the roster as it stands right now. Auburn is going to be a team to worry about. If I don't care if you're Arkansas,
SEC contender.
Exactly, and I think they're going to be up there again with Arkansas. I think Arkansas is probably going to be the best team going into the SEC next year. I think that's Eric Musselman decided he was going to put his.
Oh yeah, the Muss Bus chose violence, but this is a do or die year for Coach Calipari in Kentucky. In my opinion, I think this is
do or die for John Calipari. He has a lifetime contract.
No, I think this is the year where if things go south in Lexington, I think, or they're not where people think it should be, that Kentucky could see leadership change. But I think that team's really talented. Rick Barnes, I mean, Tennessee is going to be good, but damn, I think right now, just like the way we're looking at it, outside of Archie, I mean, Auburn's toe-to-toe with everyone. I think they're toe-to-toe with Archie.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially because I think Auburn Didn't really go after like the big names that Archie was going after, but went for the guys that were their guys.
Right.
And in some aspects of a sport, that's like not what you want to do. You want to go for the better ones. But
Brian Harsin.
but if it depends on the coach. And Bruce Pearl is a top 10 coach in college basketball.
And a developmental guy. Or
Exactly.
at least he puts the right coaches in the right places to develop guys. That is something that people don't understand enough about Bruce Pearl. I don't think Bruce Pearl's a brilliant X's and O's coach. I think he's okay. I do. I think he's a phenomenal recruiter. And I think at whatever level you want to put this, he's a great motivator. We know this for a fact. I mean, and I think that his game management is okay. Roster management, I think, is solid and large. He's really, really good at being a GM in terms of finding the right guys to put in the right places to set his team up for success. I think that he's brilliant about that. And like you said, Dylan, that all ties back into getting your guys, right?
Yep. And I mean, looking at this roster again, I mean, it's good. It's so good because Aiden Holloway is going to be so him. And God, I wish there was a way for him not to be a one and done.
There is none. There is none.
I'm imagining a world.
Maybe if they cancel the 2024 NBA draft.
Could you imagine a team with Aiden Holloway, Tahad Pettiford? Denver Jones has what, 2 more years left?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my Lord. Jay Will finds his 8th year of eligibility.
Deny decides he wants another run at it.
Julian Phillips and Tyron Lawrence finally decide they want to come to the Plains.
They've actually not played basketball in a year at this point because no one's heard from them.
Yeah, I looked it up. They're both like still wondering. They have, as this comes out, 2 days to decide if they're gonna stay in the draft or not. But yeah, it speaks to Bruce Pearl's retention of players. Auburn did not lose a lot of players. That like Zeb Jasper graduated, but I think
That's sad.
And what Auburn lost, I think they gained even more.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And
Denver Jones offers that same kind of defense that Zeb Jasper does with the addition of an offensive game.
Yeah, like let's be honest too. Like last year, I thought last year's team was the 3rd best team we've seen in the past 4 years at Auburn.
Yeah,
maybe 4th best in the past 5 years. It was significantly down. That team, I'll tell you guys right now, in the regular season, would have gotten their ass kicked by that 2022 team. That was the best team regular season for sure that Bruce Pearl's ever had. That 19 team was special. That 20 to 21, 19 to 20 team with Isaac Okoro was special. This is becoming the standard. It's not rebuild now; it's reload. And I know Auburn fans are, we want that national championship. We want it. We want it. We want it. We feel like we're on the cusp, folks. I'm going to say it again. Tony Barbie was not that long ago, and the comeback of Auburn basketball under Bruce Pearl has been nothing short of remarkable. So, that being said, let's go talk baseball.
I feel like you've told too many fans like too many times that Tony Barbie was not that long ago.
People forget, man. Like I get into this conversation pretty much every time I get into town. Every time I go to Auburn, and someone will mention,
Not need to do that.
What'd you say?
You don't need to do that.
Well, someone will mention to me like, oh, well, Bruce did this, Bruce did that. I'm a little worried about this. I'm a little worried about that. I have to look and be like, do you not remember Tony Barbie?
It's gonna be 20. I can't wait for the 2025 episode come out where he says Brian Harsin wasn't that long ago.
Oh no! Look, Brian Harson's unequivocally the worst hire in the history of Auburn athletics. Number
Sports.
2 is Tony Barbie.
Yeah, they're 1 and 2, and
and honestly, I will listen to people that have 1A, 1B arguments. I will absolutely. There is an argument for Tony Barbie too. Like I completely get it. Recency bias says Brian Harsin, but
let's talk about some good. Let's talk about some good.
Yeah, let's talk about the best hire on the Plains right now, and that's saying something because I think Bruce Pearl's a fantastic. We know Bruce Pearl was, and we think Hugh Freeze is. Butch Thompson, dude, this guy's different. Auburn Baseball hosting its 2nd consecutive regional on the Plains at Plainsman Park. It pains me with every fiber in my being that I won't be there this weekend. That I work in college summer ball, so what can I do about it, right? Auburn's going to play host 2. Let's see if I can get ace this pop quiz. I got like a maybe like a I guess a C or not even a D when we
you got 66%.
Yeah, 66%. So Auburn will be playing host to Samford, Southern Miss, and I'm forgetting the freebie. I almost said Clemson. Hello, that's on the same side of the bracket. I can do this. Oh, UPenn.
There you go. I was trying to find a pen.
I was trying to
I don't
remember.
have one on my desk.
Well, I was thinking red, white, and blue, and then I said Southern Miss, and I almost said South Alabama. It was a whole procedure there. Auburn's playing in a regional that they are absolutely capable of winning, Dylan.
Oh, yeah. And hopefully Auburn does not have to travel to Clemson, South Carolina again in another sport on the diamond.
Dylan might go riot.
I might do something. A little hasty. I might. And that means I'm going to go on Twitter and rant.
That's right. I've got a question for you. And we kind of tease this coming into this. We're going to break down this regional on Thursday, on the Thursday show. So just wanted to put that out there in the sphere. But it is important to note that this is the first time in history Auburn has hosted back-to-back years. Huh?
I was verbal meme. I was
two
in a row.
Gotcha. That's actually a visual meme. But anyways.
I whispered it, verbal.
So coaches on the Plains right now. Hugh Freeze, we think a lot of people think it's gonna be a really good hire. Bruce Pearl was a fantastic hire. Johnny Harris, I think we both agree, fantastic hire. Mickey Dean, a little bit on the hot seat right now. Jeff Graba, phenomenal head coach, incredible what he does there. And this list, Brent Crouch, this Karen Hoppe, this list goes on and on and on.
Greg Williams,
thank you. Is Butch Thompson the best coach, respectively, in his discipline on the Plains right now?
I do think it is between right now, based on what we know. Greg Williams, I think, does make a case.
Oh, because for sure.
Equestrian has just been as good as they've been for as long as they've been.
There's a Jeff Graba argument.
Graba is a big argument. Yeah, I think it does come between Greg and Butch to me. Also, Bruce would probably be right there behind them just because of the success that they've gotten in back-to-back years. But yeah, Butch Thompson definitely has some kind of argument just because what happened with this team? Butch Thompson looked at elimination from the SEC tournament in the face and turned this team into a regional hosting team.
Yeah. And it's not the first time we've seen Butch do this. I want to start with this year as a textbook example. For whatever reason, Butch Thompson, and this is me being 100% high praise for Butch Thompson, by the way. I don't want anyone to take this in the wrong direction. Butch Thompson is really, really good at getting his guys to buy in regardless of the circumstance. He never really wavers from and believing in the group that he's got. He's recruited remarkably well, and he trusts in the development of his guys. And he understands better than anyone, based on his experience in Mississippi State, and obviously his alma mater, and his experience here at Auburn. He understands the way things work. He understands that going through a season, that the way that you start is not nearly as important as the way you finish. Matter of fact, it pales in comparison. He understands that you don't even have to really kick ass at the beginning of conference play. It's nicer if you do, but if you don't, you can still course correct. You can learn. You can teach guys. And he's just kind of kept them right there above sea level until the end of until Auburn has gotten super hot coming down the stretch, right? And he's made sure his team has kind of stayed in games and in places. And when Auburn's not pitching well, he's made intelligent defensive and offensive substitutions, whether that be in the field or pinch hitting situations. He's not been overly aggressive with the base running and on a team that you can't be as aggressive as you've seen in years past. He's very, very, very good at understanding what a team's persona, what their shtick is, and what their brand of baseball is. And they're not always the same. I listened to a friend of the program the other day, who I'll choose to leave off the record because I don't want to steal his thunder when he releases some stuff here. Coming out soon. A really hot take, good take, in my opinion. I had a friend of the program speak to me the other day, comparing Butch Thompson to Pat Dye. And I talked about this on the Up Tempo podcast the other day. They asked me if I was comfortable giving Butch Thompson a blank check, and the answer to giving anyone a blank check is always no. But metaphorically, yes. And I told him the same thing, that I listen, Pat Dye, I understand. I completely get it. Like, best coach in the history of Auburn. Like, we understand. I'm with you. I'm with you guys. There are some parallelisms that when this friend of the program puts together some stuff, I want you guys to listen because it's cool. It's super, super exciting. I think Butch Thompson is unequivocally the best head coach right now on the Plains. Bruce Pearl, fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Greg Williams, fantastic. Huge believer in what Johnny Harris is doing with that women's basketball program. We know about Jeff Grava. I get it. I think there's a lot of reason people forget the shitter Auburn baseball was in with Sonny Galloway. This feels like I've talked about this twice now. It's got the parallelism, right? Going back to what we mentioned during basketball. But Auburn baseball was really, really, really bad.
Oh, yeah.
In baseball, I think, in my opinion, tougher to rebuild than basketball because of A, roster size, B, now we've got this transfer portal, right? And C, it's hard to get signees and not lose them to the MLB. It's the only sport you have to fight with that. And for now, until basketball becomes a problem.
Basketball, G League.
Okay. It is way more commonplace in baseball. But yes, I completely understand.
Jalen Green would have been an Auburn Tiger.
Yeah, I understand. But all that to be said, Dylan, I think that the clear answer right now is Butch Thompson, as wild as that may sound.
Yeah, when you say it like that, I can agree with you. But yeah, I'll have to throw in all the other sports Auburn's really good at, i.e. Greg Williams. But I think as
Aaron Hopper.
Yeah.
I mean, soccer's only been relevant as of late because of her.
Facts. Big facts. I just want to go. I was looking at the stat sheet for Auburn baseball, by the way. We got to shout out Bryson Ware. We haven't brought up yet because he's a home run king now.
That was actually going to be my closer.
Sorry.
It's yours. No, take it. It's yours. I rambled about Butch. It's yours.
Bryson freaking Ware. 24 home runs.
Let's go. Dude
is ridiculous. And he is going to be passing the torch, metaphorically. It's basically a baseball bat that's on fire. Because, that's how fast he hits that ball. That's how hard he hits it. So much friction. The bat's on fire.
Right. Sure.
Ike Irish has just as many doubles as Bryson Ware's home runs.
I'm telling you, I've been so interested ever since game 1 of the SEC tournament about that.
They brought up the doubles.
Yep, I have been so fascinated in seeing how that correlates next year. I'm curious.
Yeah, but 10 more home runs than anybody else on the team. I'm trying to remember how much was the difference between Sonny D and everyone else. It wasn't that, was it?
That team last year also popped more homers than this year's team.
Well, that team started off hot, I believe.
That team was objectively better, not as hot as this team coming into the playoffs and in the postseason.
It does. I think we talked about this later on the Thursday show. Can this team, who has now lost 2 in a row, one to Vandy and then Bama, you shrug your shoulders, but it does beg the question: can they get back on fire hot?
Yes,
and I think they were given the right teams to do that.
You want me to go full barn on you for a second here? Just actual show a little barn.
The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I like how you pushed away because I said I'm going to barn for a second. It's freaking Hoover. Auburn's just not good at Hoover. It's unbelievable how bad Auburn is in Hoover. You won one game. Take it, roll with it, whatever. Auburn wasn't good in Hoover the last 2 times that Auburn's been to the College World Series. I think it doesn't matter. That's just my opinion.
To go against your point as well, last year's team hit 74 home runs. This year's team hit 84.
Actually?
Yep.
This year's team had more pop.
Yep, 12
I
more.
guess they had to because the pitching was really rough. Until late.
They had 3 guys get double digit on this year's team. Last year only had Bobby Barrels and Sonny D.
Fascinating.
And then you had, going through the names, Bryson Ware, Coop McMurray, and of course, Cole Foster, who hates trees, by the way, because he hit a rocket right into the forest next to the stadium.
Not a fan of trees, and Auburn fans not fans of Hoover. But I would not be. Sure, it begs the question, Dylan. I'm not pressed. I wouldn't be pressed.
I think they were given the right opponents because you got no P5s. Got to worry a little bit about So Miss. I think So Miss is the only one that's really going to be hammering in. And that knock on wood, sell your soul for Friday night win.
Sure.
Every time I'm
we've seen Southern Miss upset SEC teams, namely last year. that have been hosting regional.
And they've been hot too. They've been very hot too.
It's a really good baseball club. It's a good club. I do think Auburn can win this. As a matter of fact, I do think Auburn will win this regional. I kind of, just to piggyback off of your conversation about the SEC tournament, unless you're really making a real run at supers, which I think was on the table, but I think you need to win a couple more than maybe we let on. At some point, what's the competitive advantage of not getting rest days? Like, I'm kind of not joking.
I mean,
you see my point here.
I got to be honest. I read. I forgot who wrote it in the Auburn Daily. The takeaways from it, and I'm sure it was probably
either Lindsey Crosby or Andrew Stefaniak.
Yeah, it was one of those two. And if you've heard them, they've both been on the show, and they dwarf us and what we know about college baseball.
Sure.
And they make us look stupid. It was Lindsey Crosby. He talked about the importance of Nate LaRue, not having him at Bama. Talk about a guy who has popped off recently. You didn't have Nate LaRue in the Bama game, and the defense just wasn't there. And Nate LaRue, as bad as a batter as he was at the start of the season, was a hell of a catcher all throughout his career. And but I will say this: Auburn it will be pairing with the Clemson regional. So go Lipscomb, go Charlotte. I will say go Rocky Top as well, because that means if one of those three teams win, Auburn will also be hosting a super regional.
Yeah, Clemson
for back-to-back years.
That's a bad draw. That's a really bad draw.
Again, I'm saying it. If Auburn gets eliminated, I'm just saying it. If they get eliminated by Clemson in another diamond sport, I will be losing my mind.
If Auburn gets eliminated by Clemson in another diamond sport, you'll hear about it right here on the College Loop every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
Yes, you will, Tarr.
And with that, I'm Harrison Tarr. I buy Harrison Tarr on the Bird app. If you want to check out any of my, controversial takes, you can follow me along with me there. Otherwise, ESPN Plus is done. I'm done for the season. I didn't get any conference tournament games. #sad. It's okay. You're one of the job. We're getting conference tournament games next year. We're bringing those vibes. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to go and manifest it. I'll have full 2 seasons under my belt. So conference tournament, here I come next year. Really, really excited about that opportunity and calling the SoCon all season. So that'll be a ton of fun. I will be back here on the Thursday show. Will not be on the Sunday show, to my knowledge. I have got to go out of town for work. Baseball season starting, so go Bacon, I suppose. If you're around Macon, let me know. Otherwise, Dylan, enjoyed it, man. This was a great show. This was a banger, and I will looking forward to talking ball with you again on Wednesday night.
And don't worry, I will be wearing my Macon Bacon hat to incorporate you in some way on the Sunday show. So don't worry about that.
Excellent.
But I'm Dylan Larck at You Boy the Tank on Twitter. If you're listening, it's at YABOI the Tank. And if you're watching, it's just right there. Just right, little right there. That's also in the link in the bio as well. So while you're scrolling down and go like the video and comment, you can go follow us right there too. But yeah, if you want to listen to us, you guys on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music. And if you want us on social media, you got us on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Like, subscribe, ring the bell.
Sadly, the MySpace. But we are 40 subs away from Daniel Locke having to do a little TikTok dance. And we're 140 subs away from Colin, or 240 away from Colin having to do a TikTok dance, our little intern.
Renegade.
And again, we are 740 subscribers away from actually getting that MySpace that y'all have all been waiting for.
That's gonna be the wildest day of our life.
Yeah, it's gonna be wild, of course.
Bizarre.
I don't know how I'm gonna post on there. It'll be Colin's job, hopefully. But with all that being said, this has been the College Loop podcast.